For CMV, the specimens are going to be urine, throat swabs, MP, bronch washes, biopsies, or whole blood. These, again, transported on Hanks or VTM. And we'd also like to say that urine should be transported within 24 hours and shipped at refrigerated temperatures. The turnaround time for CMV is a little bit longer. It'll be 4 weeks for the slow grower. Okay, for enteroviruses, we're talking about Coxsackies, echoviruses, and polio. The specimens will be stool, throat, MP swabs, CSF, or any pericardial fluid. Transported on Hanks or the VTM, our turnaround time will be 14 days. Okay, and then specifically for polio, the specimens can be stool, throat, MP, or CSF, transported again on Hanks or the VTM, turnaround time of 14 days. For herpes, you can send us either the lesion or some vesicle fluid, samples from the throat, MP, or rectal swabs, transported again on Hanks or the VTM. Turnaround time is a little shorter, only 7 days. And then we'd also like to say that the herpes testing that we do here doesn't differentiate between type 1 and 2. That test, we can't do the typing here. Okay, for measles, the specimens we're accepting will be throats, MP swabs, urines, or whole blood. It's preferred that you send the MP blood and urine for this. MP swabs for PCR and culture should be collected as close to the rash onset as possible, and ideally within 3 days of that. So MP specimens taken 7 to 10 days after the onset of rash are acceptable, but they're strongly not preferred because it decreases the sensitivity of the test, and the organism still may not be present. For transporting, you can send it in on Hanks or the Universal Viral Transport Media, the VTM, and turnaround time will be 14 days. Okay, for mumps, the specimen for this will be throats, MP swabs, urine, sputums, CSF, or buccal swabs. It is preferred to send the buccal swabs and blood, and then you want to collect those buccal swabs as close to the onset of peritidis as possible, and ideally within 3 days. Buccal specimens taken up to 7 to 9 days after peritidis onset may also be acceptable, but they're not preferred. Peritidis is a swelling of your parotid glands at the back of your throat. And these can be transported as well on Hanks Transport Media or the VTM with a turnaround time of 14 days. Okay, for rubella. The rubella IgM can be performed at the state lab, while specimens for PCR would be forwarded to the CDC. So you do want to collect, collections and specimen types are similar to measles for this. All right, for parainfluenza, specimens are going to be throat, MP, or sputum, transported on the Hanks Transport Media or the VTM with a turnaround time of 14 days. Rhinovirus, as well, throat or MP swabs transported on Hanks or the VTM, turnaround time 14 days. Parainfluenza and rhinoviruses are not actually tests that you can request from the submission form. They're just included in the respiratory panel. So don't think that you have to know that your patient, you suspect rhinovirus or parainfluenza. If you're just sending it in for respiratory culture, we will screen for these. Okay, for RSV, specimens will be either be a throat or MP swab transported on Hanks or the VTM, turnaround time of 14 days. Okay, for chickenpox or varicella zoster, the specimen is going to be a vesicle fluid transported in the Hanks or the VTM. Our turnaround time will be 14 days. Okay, for viral specimen types, we are accepting a range of sample types, everything from nasopharyngeal or MP swabs, throat swabs, rectal swabs, urines, throat washes, CSF, cervical, eye specimens, stools, vesicular lesions, blood, autopsies, or biopsy specimens. So please consult Guided Laboratory Services if the specimen you'd like to collect is in question for the organism suspected. All right, for rabies, we're going to just talk about it on one slide here. The form is available for you to print at the top of the screen. And we would just like to say that heads of animals that are the size of a dog or smaller should be submitted. If you need to submit an animal for rabies testing that's larger than a dog, if you could please get in touch with a local veterinarian, or you can contact us at our vector epi section. We can put you in touch with somebody who can remove the head prior to sending the sample in. So if you're sending a small animal, such as a bat, you can actually just send the whole animal in. Also keep in mind that birds and reptiles are not accepted for rabies examination, and you do want to send the sample or the head in as soon after death as possible. Animals or heads that are severely decomposed may be rejected and may not be suitable for testing. So if you do have any questions, you can always call the virology laboratory or the vector epidemiology departments. And results from the laboratory test will be available within 24 to 48 hours after receipt of sample. Okay, for environmental microbiology, we're talking about food and water testing at the State Public Health Laboratory. So for food testing or food and water testing, in addition to the required fields of information on the submission forms, you could also include the following information, anything like patient symptoms, incubation periods, duration of the illness, any diagnosis from a physician, any product manufacturer label or copy. Any of that information will be beneficial for us. These submission forms are actually not available online. They're either available in person at the laboratory, or by request we can mail them out to you. It's because they are not a single sheet. They have a couple carbon copies beneath them. Okay, again, for environmental micro, after you've determined the appropriate food specimen to submit, you want to aseptically collect at least a minimum of 200 grams of a solid product, or at least a minimum of 100 mils of liquid. And you can collect these in the sterile whirl packs, which you see on the right, or a sterile urine cup. And appropriate samples is the key here for environmental testing, to ensure that you have chosen a representative sample to test. So all samples being sent in for food or water should be, for food micro, should be kept cold at refrigerator temperatures, which are going to be less than 10 degrees C, during transit to the lab. And also keep in mind that samples that are being submitted for infectious testing need to be triple packed and shipped accordingly. And on the bottom right, you'll see a copy of our food submission form. And you can easily keep your samples cold during transit by including an ice pack with the shipment. Okay, for water samples, non-regulatory water samples will need some prior approval before we can accept it for testing at the laboratory. You'll see a copy of the submission form on the bottom left-hand corner here. Okay, thank you again. This is Rob Nicola, an ADHS training coordinator, and I would really like to express gratitude to the ADHS epidemiology and laboratory staff for their assistance with this presentation, especially our lab epi liaison, Erica Weiss, who was sitting with me for technical support, Jessica Rigler, Laura Earhart, Craig Levy, Gene Fleming, and Caleb Wiedemann. All the pictures that were used in this presentation were either courtesy of the CDC Public Health Image Library, the ASM Microbe Library, or taken by me. And most of the content here is based off of the Guide to Laboratory Services and recommended CDC guidelines. Some additional resources for you, again, the link to the Guide to Laboratory Services, and then another extremely beneficial link is the CDC publication, the BMBL. Current edition is the 5th edition with the link, as well as a link to our ADHS microbiology and epidemiology websites.